Oh yeah, I should probably actually. Wait. This is safer. Okay. Good. I don't. That one I wanted to watch, but I think I'll save it for later. And
Derivatives.
that one I'm also saving for later. I mean, all of these fun things I'm saving for later. Why am I not showing people what I'm gonna watch? Because this is what I'm gonna watch. I probably shouldn't even have this here. There we go. How was the trick? No, I wanted to only go down. It didn't work with this. Discord did it, but this one didn't. Voila. Sorry about the obnoxious amount of gas, but that is just how it is today. And furthermore, I kind of wanted to do that just because it's funny that I've been like talking and writing about fallacies for like 2 days, like 4 days, I don't know. And it comes out with propaganda techniques. And it's extra fun and interesting because, of course, I think that cynicism is good and important. Do that just. Sorry, that was me. My bad. Yes, I think I've been sort of slowly triggering myself to engage with some interesting ideas. All atheist arguments answered in 10 minutes. What? That's a recommended video on my video. That's. Well, I'm just scrolling down. Okay, this is funny. So here I'm like, this got recommended next to me opening my own, because I have no idea how to open chat. In a new, I know how to do it if I just completely swap from Twitch to YouTube, then it opens up a chat window. I have no idea why. Oh god. Oh, I see. I have no idea why it doesn't come up every time. Anyway. What am I talking? Yes, so this video came up as my recommended, and as I scroll down, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. As a Christian who is always willing to learn more, I was saddened that some arguments were just dismissed when I wanted a real argument. Dude, I thought this video was satire until like the halfway. As someone that was religious but not anymore, I can say this is exactly what I thought atheism was before I talked with him. Seriously, this is the most vivid example of a straw man I have ever seen. Oh god, he's not even. Oh, that's mean. So that one I just started reading it. I was raised Christian and I have trauma, which is already a straw man. And in parentheses, they said not to sin, which is like straw manning the trauma itself. Like the idea that trauma is the cause of losing your faith is itself already like. I mean, you could sort of weirdly extrapolate it to the problem. Oh, by the way, this piece of tape is because my glasses are broken. They can sort of bend a little bit. They're more flexible now, which maybe it's a benefit. We'll see. Anyway, yeah. So already, like, it's like multiple layers. But yeah, God is a delusion. Oh, I'm gonna do that someday. I'm probably not gonna start it today, but I have a plan. I want to read the Quran. I have it here actually, a copy of the Quran, and you can also get it online, of course. So I think I'm going to sort of double up, have the Quran in front of me while reading it. I might do that actually when it's daytime, because usually I stream in the middle of the night, or in this case, at 6 a.m. for me, which is Interesting. I've almost gone all the way around the sleeping pattern. Got up at like 4 a.m. today, so I mean that's practically normal. Yeah. I guess my natural sleeping rhythm is like not a 24-hour day, but like a 26-hour day, where I constantly just shift it 2 hours every day. That would be very difficult to maintain as a streaming schedule, but it is. This is just how it is. So let us. So I'm gonna make a little bit of a sort of a caveat opening before I start stealing this content. Of course, when I do these kinds of videos, I spend like 500 years just. No, not like that. I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to critically examine the beliefs that lead to them. There we go. Very close enough. A little bit more. Come on. I don't want to see the little line there. Yeah, okay. So we go into docs. Yeah. I kind of want to do that too as well. I might read actually some of my essays, and then I can just sort of use that recording, because I was writing this. I wrote this essay on capitalism based on this excellent video. I don't actually remember what it was, but
all that to do, then we've got.
So I believe it was this one. I don't know. Yeah, Bellier News. So this guy on this channel was making videos on Total War and Creative Assembly and all of that, and so obviously there's several of them, and I did Creative Assembly is dying, but the interesting thing for me was that there were all these amazing comments on capitalism. So let us begin here. I just want to show some of what I experienced, what was so amazing here. So I cannot fathom how not a single company can process the idea that long-term profit will outweigh short-term gain. It's sort of such a fascinating thought to start with, because maybe short-term profit won't outweigh. No, sorry, maybe, damn it. If I had done that, that would have been a great take. Maybe actually the problem is that short-term profit will outweigh long-term gain. So that's what's fascinating to me. The first draft of this, I basically did the math. I checked to see where the limit is, just for my own. I mean, I realized afterwards that was a pointless, worthless exercise, because what I want to get at is a more simple prospect, which is if you gain more money, you have more money to use to gain more money, which then, like, so the idea that short-term thinking about things in the short term is necessary for thinking about things in the long term. So if you, the way I thought about it was, I'm going to open it actually. I did change my mind several times. The way I thought about it, like, was if you invest 1 million, oh, that's not how that works. If you invest, did I have that connected in? Yeah, perfect. Then I can do the tablet thing. Actually, why am I doing it like this? I have a much better device for doing this on. Oh, my files, essays. I'm sorry, I'm doing a little bit of work. Livestream, perfect. That's not, doesn't matter if we spell it right. Who cares? New notebook. What's today's date? The 9th. 9/01. And let's streamcast, screen share. What? Is it not working? Is it? Do we have to do the whole shebang today? Yeah, we do have to do the whole shebang today. That's fantastic. This device is not as... Oh, there we go. Is it syncing? Okay, let's go back to the finger. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is... Actually, fuck it. Let's just read through the whole thing and we'll see if I can make the point and I'll clarify as I go. Creative assembly is dying. Probably. Honestly, I have no idea. Go ask a journalist or something. They know about these kinds of things. Bellier News, that's where I found it. But bear with me. I'm going to go through some YouTube comments and explain why they're stupid, which is much more fun than actually thinking about things in complicated ways. So, there are some comments, like the one I showed you. I cannot fathom how not a single company can process... I'm just going to open the folder so I can show you. The pics for video. This is what late stage capitalism looks like. So the idea here, the idea that you cannot fathom why companies would would prefer short-term profit over long-term gain. Well, that's maybe the reason you can't fathom this isn't because they're being stupid, but because you are. Maybe they actually know more than you. Maybe we should approach the weird things we observe with a little bit of curiosity instead of, oh, they're all clearly very evil, and that's why they do the things they do. So, this is about cynicism. This is about how the things we think are, or the things we describe out with loads of negatively charged words, like words that are negatively charged by themselves, like greed and selfishness, maybe they're not as bad as we make them out to be. So, let's think about it like this. Money now is better than money later. This is especially true if you're a greedy bastard, because you spend most of your money now getting more money later. If you give money to me, I piss it away on Pepsi Max and chocolate and fixing my glasses. If you give money to a billionaire, they invest it in something which gives them massive returns. It is actually, this is a little bit of a digression, but this triggered me to think, actually, it might actually just be the whole out-of-touch billionaire statement, oh, drink less Starbucks. There's actually a grain of truth in that. The grain of truth is that the kinds of people who go for, who are good at making money are the kinds of people who don't buy Starbucks. The kinds of people, or not necessarily just Starbucks, it's the kinds of people who think all of the time, how can I cut costs? How can I live for as little as possible? How can I make my life less luxurious in order to profit myself more? And they sort of, to explain this more, because it's obviously not the case. It doesn't seem like it's the case when you look at a billionaire, like they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on wasteful shit. But I have a good example of the case I'm trying to make. Weirdly, he's not a billionaire yet, but we'll see. My youngest brother is radically different in how he views resource management to me. So when I went trick-or-treating when I was a kid, I remember there was once I got like this full shopping bag. It was stuffed. It was completely full to bursting. And I ate it as fast as humanly possible. I didn't throw up, but I did get nauseous several times in that process. Of course, I would never admit this to my mother, who insisted I should not eat everything I could lay my hands on. But regardless, I did. Contrast this with my youngest brother, who put his candy in a closet, and once, twice, 3 times a week, he would take one piece of candy from that pile. In his mind, the feeling of having access to this and knowing he had it was more valuable than the actual utility he could gain from eating it. For me, the thing in itself has only value in the consumption. I'm a consumer. But for him, and for billionaires, for economically minded people, people who are inclined to be able to make a lot of money, greedy bastards, as I like to call them. It's actually just the feeling of having the high score, of having money is like, that's how I've started to understand how economists sort of think about things. It's like a video game. They're playing for a high score, and they're very good at it. And their high score is a numerical value. They get points. They get dollar points. It's for the people who are best at making money. That's what they want. So yeah, weirdly enough, I think it actually is about Starbucks. But so yes, so this kind of short-term bias might be bad for the company, but I don't see why I should care. Sorry, going back to the essay. We loved Creative Assembly when they made good games. Now that they've fucked that up, we should stop. Maybe let them get bought out by a company who actually wants to make good games, or just someone who's trying to undercut them. But even then, why do we care? Why not just let their real talent get poached? And their intellectual property sold to the highest bidder? I mean, why do we care that Creative Assembly, specifically Creative Assembly, continues to exist? Why don't we actually want new and other companies? I think the best case scenario is that some indie game company takes over. Someone with something to prove, a lot of talent, and a willingness to undercut the competition. New and small companies are better for this. That's, in fact, very free market principle. You have this sort of weird tug and pull, because monopoly is really bad for the free market. Ideally, the counter to this is you want as many small industries as possible. They always can compete better because they can all of them can try different strategies, and whichever one succeeds, they can adopt, and then they can sort of learn from each other. However, you lose that out on a different advantage, which is the economies of scale. If you have one big factory producing the same thing 100,000 times, it's more efficient than 100 different factories producing 1,000 things, because they cost less per unit. So eventually, you have this weird tug and pull where the benefits of the free market are best supported by having many small independent companies, whereas the strength, or getting a big company, does have certain utilities. Not exactly how clear this is for games, but it is certainly the case for manufacturing various goods. So yeah, I want Creative Assembly to fail. I want every AAA company to fail. I want them to die and be replaced by a flood of small indie developers, like a bushfire, where all of the old stagnant plants, or companies in this case, get burned down, and the young ones feast on their ashes and grow up to new ones. I think employees are the people who care about a stable work environment, which doesn't necessarily mean good games. You could have a stable work environment where you just make shit all the time. A Sisyphean task, you would call that. For instance, many jobs have just busy work. So not exactly, not necessarily. I mean, that's a good economic security if you know that instead of firing you, your company's just going to give you more busy work. But that's not good for games. I'm a consumer. I don't care about this. CEOs obviously don't care about making good games. They only care about money, as we've established. And gambling, of course, they don't play games because gambling on stocks is a much more fun game, for them at least. But like I said, I am a consumer. I only care about the best quality product for the lowest quality price. Fuck the employees, fuck the CEOs, and fuck the investors. I care about me, so should you. So, in that same way, I think we should all look forward to the death of Creative Assembly and all other big companies that we've come to rely on. This sort of brand loyalty is toxic to the free market. But thankfully, I know that my wish will be granted, Because I know that when CEOs get too greedy and they try to squeeze too much money out of our strained bank accounts, that's when we vote with our wallets. I can't say that sentence. That's when we vote with our... See, W's and V's are really hard for Norwegians. That's when we vote with our wallets. That's when we vote with our wallets. Wow. So, why aren't we voting with our wallets? Why aren't we actually investing in companies that make good games instead of the companies that we always knew and loved? Fuck the companies we always knew and loved. Fuck the game series we always knew and loved. Fuck, like it. This is gonna be a weird ass tangent. I wish I'd saved this, but there were comments on a video. Maybe I did save it. There were comments on a video about StarCraft 2. Or no, about Warcraft. And it said, essentially, what if... Actually, I'm almost certain I saved the comment. The idea was essentially that, what if... Imagine it was on there's this new mod for Warcraft 3 where you get to play Warcraft 2. So in this mod, which it seems genius. I don't have Warcraft Reforged, so I don't really understand if it's going to have any value for me. But if you this idea is they're making a mod for Warcraft 3 where you can play Warcraft 2. They're essentially making Warcraft 2 Reforged. And this was a comment under it. Imagine if $1 billion company would put as much effort and love as fans do instead of making a quick money grab scheme from a beloved franchise. Great work, I get y'all's definitely play it. Probably true. Love this. Like I said, small indie developers, perfect. But if we imagine $1 billion company putting as much effort and love as fans do instead of making a quick money grab scheme, then they wouldn't be $1 billion companies. They would... That's like the time and effort. And the great example of this was the comparison between the profits. I think Pirate Software did it. He's almost certainly streaming. He streams fucking all the time. But Pirate Software did it. Thor, as we like to call him, talked about how the what's it called? The Astral Mount. Let's look it up so you can see what I'm saying. Space Forest. Wow. What's it called? No? World. I don't remember what it's called. Yes, this one. $15 horse for a while made more money than StarCraft 2. So, clearly, we're voting for this. This is what we think we should spend our money on. This is what we think is valuable. We think it's more valuable to us. We're more willing. We think to spend money on a $15 horse to brag to our friends, to show off because it looks so cool, than we are to spend money on what is, I think, arguably, I would say definitely, but many would say arguably the best RTS ever to exist. So I think we're getting at a really important issue here, which is that we're not actually spending money on the things we pretend that we care about. We're spending money. We're saying one things with our mouth and we're doing something else with our wallet. And so, you know what? I understand why we get what we get, because that's what we spend our money on. That's what we're telling the world we care about. You can actually extrapolate this to an even worse scenario, which I have done in a different essay. When we spend money on movies, we go to the cinema. We know that, and I like this as an example because it's clearly something you only do for pleasure. We know that there are people in the world who are starving to death, and we go to the cinema. Clearly, based on our actions, rather than our words, who gives a fuck about what we say we care about, what we act? Our actions say that we care more about our pleasure while watching a 2-hour movie than we care about someone having enough food today. This is demonstrable by our actions. Instead of relying on our ideas of morality and what we claim we care about, let's rely on what we actually do, on how we actually act. There might be an interesting video here. I saw Alex O'Connor had an interview to this effect. Let's see, Alex O'Connor ethics. I'm probably not going to get it if I do it here. Yeah, this is a real crisis. He was interviewed by Chris Williams.
Alex O'Connor.
I just opened it. I'm probably not going to watch it because it's really long, but the idea here that we care about the things we say care about is clearly not true, and I think it probably wasn't true back in the day either, which is might be like rejecting this statement, which is why it's interesting. But I think it's clearly not true right now that we care about people like that. So I'm gonna go bathroom break, and then we're gonna do next chapter. I did. In the bathroom, I had this amazing thought. To make it a little bit less of a sort of extreme position, what I just said about how our real ethics are different from our stated ethics. There is, I think, the question I'm sort of picking at here is that do we care? Is it more important to reduce human suffering than to increase human pleasure? And phrased like this, you can start to intuitively see there are situations in which actually maybe it is more correct for us to spend money on going to the cinema, because maybe this gains us. Maybe, let's do an hyperbole. Maybe it costs $1 to go to the cinema, and it costs $100 to feed a person for a day. This is obviously not the truth, but we're putting it to a massive extreme just to sort of highlight this. In this situation, well, then it would be reasonable to argue that the utility gained per individual, per dollar, actually more specifically, not per individual, per dollar, is better spent on cinema than on saving lives. Which is a horrifying thought, but it's not necessarily illogical. But back to the less philosophically less philosophically sophisticated argument, more just about how we should apply cynicism, how we should be critical of, or how we should not be critical of our own criticality, be critical of how we think about words, how we think about greed and selfishness, and how important various things like capitalism is so negatively charged as a concept at this point, and I think this is unjustified, or at least a lot of it is certainly unjustified. I do actually have a different video here. Did I not save that? No. Did I save it and watch later? We may have saved it and watch later. Let me just check that very quickly. There was an interesting video regarding... I'm going to check. It might be in here, actually. No, it does not seem to be in here. Watch later. Why did I not save it? Okay. Oh, that's annoying. I want to find that, so I'm gonna have to go through. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay, you can watch me scroll through this. There we go. So this, interestingly, might be a lovely topic to deal with, because I'm arguing that certain negatively associated concepts with capitalism are in fact not that bad. So that's probably going to be the video we're going to go through, but let us continue. What I found were these comments. Let me just prove to you that these are real comments. I'm not just making this shit up. Capitalism picks for video. Publishers, let's see. Okay, I'm just going to go through all of the images and we can just click through them. Not that one. Oh, that one's the last one. I love that one. That one. This comment is hilarious because, good God, he needs some punctuation. Like, I know there's a lot of commas here, but periods. You could make 3 sentences out of that one. And I say that as someone who is absolutely awful at that. So let's also just close this one. And let's shimmy this over a little bit. I know you can't see it properly. I just want to... actually, we can make this smaller. Who cares how big this is? No, oh, yeah. But yeah, make this a little bit bigger then. There we go. Perfect. Now we can see everything. And so, why can I cannot fathom how not a single. So this all stems from this one comment chain. How I cannot fathom how not a single company can process the idea that long-term profit will outweigh short-term gain. And someone says, because they don't. If you make short-term gain after short-term gain, long-term profits mean nothing. Publishers do not care how many dev studios they have to run into the ground, as long as they are making money. Then, in the short-term gain dries up, they toss it aside like spoiled milk and move over to the next thing. They just want to make money and sell and get a nice retirement package. They couldn't care less about the next person's problem. And long-term profit is good for the company. Short-term gain is great for CEOs who stick around for a short while. So we all seem to agree that CEOs only care about money. They'll do anything to get their greedy little hands on our money. Maybe in some world filled with roses and sunshine, we can persuade it to forego profits just to see their company flourish. But back here in the real world, we don't think like that. We have only one thing going for us. We know that they're going to cling to their money at all costs, but we do have one thing going for us. They want our money. The money we currently have. It's easy to view the rich and powerful like almighty creatures. They're like parents holding our toys at arm's length. They're not. But they're not. They're not actually that. We're the parents holding the toys at arm's length. We have the power here. They will do anything for our money. Let's make them dance. And it's the same for shareholders, much more. When your company is publicly listed and traded, you need to report your financial... Oh yes, this is a great comment. So, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to give my guess. I'm going to read it as written. When your company is publicly listed and traded, you need to report your financials every quarter. Yes, that's right, every 3 months. So basically those companies need to make decisions as if they would die in the next 3 months. The stocks need to go up no matter what. It's the pressure from the shareholders. Okay. And yes, they need to sacrifice long-term gains pursuing short profit for reporting next quarter. It's not like CEOs care either, because most of their compensations are tied to stocks as well. They can't make a lot of money from the company profits, but from the stocks they are given. That's your average Jack Welch trade. Yeah. Too much speaking. When your company is publicly listed, I'm going to read it now as it would be with proper punctuation. When your company is publicly listed and traded, you need to report your financials every quarter. Period. Yes, that's right. Every 3 months. Period. So basically, those companies need to take decisions as if they would die in the next 3 months. Period. The stocks need to go up no matter what. It's the pressure from the shareholders. And yes, they need to sacrifice long-term gains pursuing short profit for reporting in the next quarter. Period. It's not like CEOs care either, because most of their compensations are tied to stocks as well. They can't make a lot of money from the company profits, but from the stocks they are given. I would argue that here you want a colon. I used to think it was a semicolon when you could either use a comma or a colon, but apparently that has a specific listing function, which is entirely useless given how often we have this scenario. But okay, let me not get into a rant about how stupid the Oxford comma is and how stupid the rules for the Oxford comma is and how stupid it is that I'm being beholden to grammatical rules that are useless. Anyway. Yeah, how is it that we have grammatical rules that don't actually clarify anything? Let's not get into that. It turns out it is possible to be greedier than your average CEO, which is shocking. And those people, they're called shareholders. They don't even think about companies as things or even as people like we do. They think of it as numbers on a screen. They care about as much about the company as we care about the soldiers in the Total War games. A means to an end and nothing more. Doesn't matter how much they suffer, how much pain they take, how much they die, how much we lose. The important thing is we win, whatever the cost. And so shareholders invest in companies that they think can make a lot of money. There's two ways of doing this, interestingly. Either they can extort us, the customers, for as much money as possible, or they can convince someone else that they can extort us for more than we are currently being extorted for. Now, let's think about this. Either there are bitches, as I said earlier, they'll do anything for our money, so either we have all the power, or they're screwing over their friends by pretending that the thing that is worth more than it really is. Pretending that we can be extorted for more than we really can be. So either we are in power, or they fuck over other rich people. What's not to love? This is perfect. The greed of the CEO is undermining them, is giving us the power, and is fucking over their friends. What a lovely world we live in. So, with all of this said and done, I think it's stupid to talk about how greed causes problems. There are wealth, like the feeling here is that it seems like the problem is that we have these really rich people, and it seems like they have so much power, but we have power. And actually, I've since writing this, I've thought of a better way of thinking about it. Money isn't, the rich people aren't keeping money in these massive vaults like Scrooge McDuck. That's not how this works. That's how it feels like it works, but that's not how it actually works. The way it actually works is that the people who have the most value, the richest people, the most value in a company is places where a lot of money is flowing through. Because money in itself isn't the interesting thing. Wealth is the flow of money. Productivity is the flow of money. That's like one of the reasons why, for instance, just direct cash donations to developing people, directly to people in developing countries, is such a good system, because basically we just want more money to flow through them. Doesn't really matter if, or it kind of matters that it flows a lot through certain areas, but the important thing is that as long as the money flows through all situations, as long as you have a lot of money flowing through you, that's what wealth is. The idea, wealth isn't just the owning of lots of money. Wealth, the actual, in order for the luxuries of the billionaires to be apparent, they actually have to spend the money. This is why they get these sort of delusions about the trickle-down economics, because in their mind, they don't have any money. They're spending all of the money they get on stuff. And the people they're spending it on, they also spend it on stuff, who also spend it on stuff, and so it all sort of spreads around. There is a problem with this, which is why I call it the trickle-around theory, which is that rich people tend to invest in companies, or at least the clever ones tend to invest in luxury companies, so that they effectively, when they're buying shit, the money ends up returning straight back to them in a sort of loop-de-loop. Instead of money trickling down to the masses, I mean, certainly some of it does, but most of it just sort of runs around in a great circle, and that's the problem. That's what the wealth inequality problem really is. It's not that they have a lot of money, it's that the wealth is constantly flowing through them. And you know what? We have a little bit of insight here then? That the masses of the middle classes and even the working classes, the people who have just enough disposable income that they can choose to spend money on games or movies or luxuries of any kind, things that they don't need, aren't essential for their survival, things that aren't food and shelter. These are things we can spend our money on, and because we have the power to choose how we spend this money, unlike food and shelter, which are sort of forced, we have the power to choose where wealth is. And what I'm saying, what is the whole point of this whole argument, is that we're choosing the people who are currently wealthy to remain wealthy. And it seems so frustratingly stupid for us to sit around and say, well, actually, the problem is all of their wealth, when the problem is clearly that we're giving them all of their wealth. We have the power to choose whether or not they have the wealth, and we choose to spend that power giving them more wealth. Tragic, but there you go. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and take another try at making the writing work. Is the Wi-Fi connected now? Connected to. Check sync. Dum, da, da, dum. No syncing errors found. Go back. Go for today's date and present with screen share. So, now today's topic will be capitalism. Oh yeah, we don't want to do that.
Capitalism keeps sticking around. For some reason. Probably because capitalism looks more like a half-baked superstition rather than
Come on now. Triggering me already?
a wise economic system that really cares about all humans.
I'm glad I paused because that's I would have been more triggered if I just played that straight out. More superstition than wise. I mean, I want to put more quotes here. Like, what was a wise system that cares? This is yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm gonna start. I like this because I like to test if the things I already believe before I see a video, if my beliefs are changing, how to sort of gauge that underway. I want to make very clear to myself what my beliefs are proceeding. This does have a little bit of a problem in that I'm harder to change my mind. Because I'm sort of preemptively critical of things, but on the other hand, that's just how my brain works, and I've been capable of changing my mind to get to where I am, and I think it's better for me to just make a fool out of myself and then change my mind continuously. But here we go. So one of the main advantages of capitalism is that you don't actually need to predict and know how it works for it to work. So this is, of course, in comparison to plan economies. Now, this is kind of the difficulty here when we're discussing capitalism is, sure, it has a lot of problems, and I argue, but in order to decide whether or not the solution to these problems are market regulation, like the my perspective, the very neoliberal perspective, or whether or not we should reject it wholesale and start a new system, the socialist and communist perspectives. And the neoliberal and social democratic perspectives say that we should do regulations, whereas the socialist and communist systems say that we should reject it. Like, rejection, let's do it more like this. Rejection versus regulation. Socialism, communism, social democrat, neolib. So, but the advantage I wanted to get at is that in the system we have, we are good at distributing resources without understanding where the resources are the most needed. So the communist dictum needs I want to practice doing the ampersand, but they always needs and abilities versus the sort of market system, market, give us money, where the money goes, who is willing to spend more. So in contrast here, sure, this statement is trivially true, I'd say, that it is more like a superstition than a wise system that cares. But there's a sort of a wisdom in that way, in that there are systems which work even without relying on us having a wise and comprehensive understanding of how the world works. So when it comes to this idea of needs and abilities and sort of understanding, and in plan economies, understanding where resources need to go, essentially we run into a little bit of a problem, which is that humans always a little bit overestimate how much they need. And they also a little bit overestimate how, or underestimate what their ability to act is. So it's a little bit of a mismatch here. And of course you could sort of set up systems for people to decide and mechanism, but that's essentially what a market is. It's a mechanism for deciding this question. So, it's not very wise, it's not very thoughtful, and we're sort of just giving up power to a system, but it is functional. So, arguably, I'd say, or demonstrably, I'd say, it's better than plan economies. So, like the question, just so I've done it. How are resources distributed? So it's not according to which principles, but how. What mechanism? Who decides needs and abilities? And this person, who decides their needs and abilities? Who watches the watchman? In the case of market forces, everyone is just competing against each other. And it solves this problem. It sort of takes a wisdom that is being rejected by so much of these sort of naive, honestly, that's what I mean. This naive bastard is rejecting a wisdom which is very integral here, which is people are assholes. Cynicism is a wisdom we have rejected. We have the understanding that people are greedy, selfish bastards. It explains 100% why all of the previous iterations of communism have failed, because at every single point there comes some person who says, I want more, I know that I deserve more, I know that I have the right for more, I'm going to take more than I actually, or than everyone else thinks I deserve. And with that problem in mind, capitalism simply says, okay, well, I don't want to deal with that problem. I don't want to convince all of the greedy bastards to just be good and moral people, and I don't want to try and purge them, because that makes me evil, and then I have to purge myself, which is just a bit of a paradox, because do I do that first or do I do that after? Who knows? But in more specific terms, we are in a situation where people are imperfect. And in a market does not require us to understand or apply, or does not require a degree of perfection, whereas a planned economy does require a degree of perfection. Maybe not for all of society, but it does require at least one person. It's like a benevolent dictator kind of scenario. It requires either a person or a system which creates perfection. Capitalism does not require that. It has absolutely no need for perfection. It goes with good enough. Good enough versus perfect. And as we know, perfect is the enemy of good. So that is, to me, the whole debate, the whole intrinsic difficulty between planned economies and market economies, is that planned economies need perfection, whereas we don't. Whereas we don't have perfection.
And
we do not have perfection, and dreaming that there is some mechanism, like, okay, I don't want to shit on politics streamers too much, but obviously I'm going to now because that's where we are. Hassan often sort of makes argument. I think often makes arguments. I want to cite something which is obviously the most hyperbolic thing I think he's ever said, which is him frustratingly, outragingly shouting, "Let the streets run red with their capitalist blood." And you sort of get the impression that the only real solution in which we can implement a sort of good socialist system is by violently removing the bad actors from our world. And I don't think that's physically possible. I think that there's sort of, in which case we'd need to do it for every generation. We'd need to sort of purge evil people. And how do you know someone's going to be evil? Do you let them grow up first? We need some system to generate good. We don't just need to state, well, the system is bad and it would be better if everyone were good. I don't care if it would be better if everyone were. If everyone were good, we could do capitalism. Capitalism would work perfectly, would be good for everyone if all the billionaires went Bill Gates and said, we're going to spend all of our money at a certain point, we're just going to dedicate our lives to using the enormous amounts of wealth that flow through us and diverting it to areas of better improvement for reducing suffering, human suffering. But I don't think so. For me, the sort of strangeness here is capitalism would work if all people were moral. And I'd say that, in fact, all of the problems that people highlight of market forces are that there are immoral people, but what the sort of implied criticism of capitalism is that it is a system that makes us immoral, a system that encourages greed. And this is such a sort of delusional concept, because the system that encourages greed, like it's tautologically true. If there is a different system that encourages benevolence, then being benevolent would be a form of greed, right? If you get value, if somebody invests, if you know that if the more kind and generous you are to all of the people around you, the more wealth and power you will gain for yourself, then the greedy choice is to be kind and benevolent to the people around you. And so the question then is, how do we make a system where that works? And I think it is absolutely trivially obvious that the way to do that is by adjusting the market, by regulating the market, because we are already markets are just a system for sort of rewards and punishment. They're just sort of a way of making it so that you can get a general reward, a reward that is always good and doesn't sort of depend on, like, if somebody gives you a fish, if you have 100,000 fish, the fish is worthless. But if somebody gives you a fish and you have no food, then the fish is infinitely worth. So you have So I think in order to achieve a system where you can reward people for the behaviors you want, you introduce money. You have a monetary system. Then what's the problem with the step to go from a system of money to a system of markets is just a trivial little application. It's just, well, if you give imagine that we're starting a new society, and new currency, new island, where we went back in time and we're trying to rebuild civilization. And so we give everyone a stack, $100 each, and just say spend it how you want it, and reward people how you want it. Give it to people, like the people, and you can decide how you trade things. This is how a market develops. You simply need there to exist this standardized currency, and the concepts of markets just flow out of them. They happen automatically. So instead of then trying to reject this sort of automatic system and say it's inherently greedy, well, any system where you can work for your own betterment is inherently greedy. Whether that betterment includes the betterment of others is up to us to make. We have to make a system wherein people working for their own betterment betters others. And I think the best system so far of doing that has been capitalism, clearly by a mile. And regulation of capitalism specifically, social democracies, where we use indeed I think the most best example of this is like semi-nationalized industries, like in obviously I'm gonna masturbate ourselves a little bit too much here, but if you think of Norway has this sovereign wealth fund and all of this, the idea is that, or not just a sovereign wealth fund, we have this oil industry that's doing very well, and the reason the sovereign wealth fund is so massive is because the oil company Equinor, the state oil company, is 2/3 owned by the state. That's what we mean when we say state owned. It's still subject to market forces. It still has the possibility of people being able to buy themselves into the company and take profits out of it through market forces, and therefore in getting all of the advantages of investment. It just also sort of semi-nationalizes it. It nationalizes the resources available to us. And it's sort of, I don't know if it counts in the context of Georgism, but it's almost reminds me of this sort of land tax, where it's the resources inherent to the world that we're interested in, and the resources inherent to the world are to a certain extent nationalized. And I think necessarily nationalizing them 100% not necessarily a great idea, but nationalizing them partially, or the majority of them nationalized, gives the state the amount of control in order to make sure that it is guided in the correct or in the ideal way, while still maintaining getting all of the advantages of capitalism and getting all of the advantages of government all in one. Trying to cut out the disadvantages of capitalism and the disadvantages of government, because the disadvantages of government, bureaucracy and just wastefulness, which capitalism are perfectly best at cutting out, like all of the sort of wastefulness. Like, it's horrifying to the sort of mass layoffs that companies do. That is a great thing. That is so good for society. Instead of everyone peddling Sisyphean tasks, we actually get fired and get a new job and do something productive. That's so much better. But now we've spent the prerequisite 15 minutes on 15 seconds. Now we can actually watch the video and feel like we're not stealing content.
Real world.
And also we have the sort of general idea of why we will be critical of them. I also didn't want to put what is my view? What are my views coming into this? How will I feel about it now when I see this?
Economic system that really cares about all humans and the real world. Let's have some fun with the weird beliefs of your average capitalist. As always, you can find references in the description box below.
Let's have some fun indeed.
Society is based on merit. I deserve what I have. I deserve what I have achieved. Payout rewards are...
Okay. Weird. I mean, he's going to have some fun, so I probably shouldn't take it too seriously. But I want to write them all down. I think there's a bit of a tricky trap you could get into here, because saying something is based on merit and saying something is decided by, like, decisively meritocratic is different. A society could be based on merit, but where merit has a very sort of slow and ponderous effect on society. So say that a society, I suppose a society in that case would be aristocratically based. But I mean, even though a society can be based on merit, it might not necessarily always lead to purely meritocratic outcomes. However, there is a sense in which it is true that, or in which I believe it, society is based on merit, and that is that the merit that's sort of the merit that society is aiming for is satisfying the desires of the people. Now, there's a tricky loophole in that people realize that you can sort of create desires by advertising, but these all sort of just exploit very basic human thoughts. I mean, if you didn't exploit it with capitalism, I would exploit it with politics. Trust me. I mean, that's kind of this is the ultimate cynicism test. Is I don't like bring me an alternative to capitalism, and I'll show you how naive you are, because cynicism just easily undercuts all non-market based economic system.
Are commensurate with dessert. I'm not talking about chocolate cake and gelato, but another kind of dessert. That's something that is deserved or merited, both reward and punishment. This belief assumes a couple of things. We have free will, we are not born equal except that maybe equal in rights, and only in certain countries. We are responsible for everything we make in life, both good and bad. We must be recognized in proportion to our efforts and abilities. And mortality cannot dissolve merit. Here are some...
The last one I'm very curious about what he means by mortality cannot dissolve. Let's go back just so I want to... We have free will. That's a fun one. I mean, in the context here, I mean, my brain immediately went full philosopher determinism. I don't know how many times I've said it, but I'm going to say it. Determinism is compatible with free will. So just that's probably a massive aside, but we are not born equal, like not in function. Yeah, that's also obviously true. I mean, we have free will, I think is true, but obviously it's not obvious to most people, because most people fall for it. Yeah, most people fall for the sort of, well, because you can predict what I'm going to do, I'm not actually free, I don't have any freedom, but you can predict what anything with an attribute will do. It's the only conceivable being which is unpredictable. It also isn't very free. It's just a randomness engine. It's just if you imagine something that is perfectly free to do anything at all, then it just does everything. But the concept of, as soon as you say somebody is capable of doing what they want, then this sort of concept of wants implies this determinism, implies that you can actually predict them. As long as you know what their wants are, you can predict the future. So the idea that we can do what we want, yeah, that's a much better way of explaining it than I've ever done. If freedom is being able to do what you want, then the idea, then you have it built in that freedom necessarily is deterministic, because what you want, if somebody knows what you want, then they can determine what you're going to do.
And mortality cannot dissolve merit. Here are some consequences of these assumptions.
Mortality is not based on merit. That's the one I really struggled with. Okay, I wanted to go back in. Responsible for everything we make in life, good and bad, interesting. Yeah, I think there's a degree of responsibility. Okay, so we're not... The thing... I think it's trivially true that we're not born equal in function. Obviously, like in rights, sure, but we're not born equal in function. We're all unique and different, and we all have special abilities. And this, unfortunately, means that some people's abilities are less useful right now than other people's abilities. Maybe the skill set and the personality you have would have been phenomenally useful 1,000 years ago, but right now, not so much. And maybe the skill set, which is very successful now, won't be very useful in 50 years and 100 years. So, to take a deep breath, that's one of the reasons why eugenics is such a bad idea. It's a weird digression for me to take, but one of the reasons apart from the moral argument, the reason eugenics is so bad as just sort of a practical idea is that what really gains societies is flexibility. What really gains a population's resilience to change is the ability to have a wide variety of different genetic information. You need a lot of different kinds of people so that when things change, those kinds of people can start to dominate, and then it can flow back and forth. Variety helps that. It's more sort of biologically defined than you can see it in sickness resistance. Whereas if you have a genetically diverse population, the whole of the population is more likely to survive illness than a very genetically narrow population.
And not dissolve merit.
Yeah, okay. We must be recognized in proportion to our efforts and abilities. That's an interesting, yeah. I mean, we must be recognized in proportion to our... yeah, we should... So this is like the principle of meritocracy. Like, we should reward merit. And mortality cannot dissolve merit. Okay.
Here are some consequences of these assumptions. Interference from the government is considered a form of punishment. Most capitalists do not like to pay taxes because they feel taxes attack their earned merit. There is no such thing as a society, but just an ocean of individuals, each getting rewards.
Wouldn't that always be the case? Like, let's try and ask ourselves, even if society isn't based on merit, in an aristocratic society, are taxes considered a form of... Yeah, 100%. The fact, it's hard to explain this in terms of like a communist society, because in terms of a communist society, they just tax it at production. They tax 100% at production, and then they distribute according to the need. So the only reason this doesn't happen in communist societies is you really don't have the time to. You don't have the position where you have money and then it is taken from you. You don't have a position where you have wealth and power and then it is reduced by the actions of the government, by the demands of the power. But it's I don't think it follows from meritocracy. It follows from greed. It follows from, I want my life to be as good as possible, and I don't know anyone who doesn't think that. The question is just, does as good as possible mean at the expense of everyone else, or not? But I mean, as I argued earlier today, I think most people actually do want their own happiness at the expense of a little bit of someone else. And the way I sort of understand this is just epistemologically, that the problem isn't that people are innately evil or even innately greedy, though it's sort of, I mean, it is effectively the same thing. The problem is that people are overestimate their own needs and underestimate their own abilities. So people generally think that they need more than they actually do to survive and to live good lives, and they think they are able to do less than they actually are. The combination of this means that there's always a bigger mismatch when you have to let people decide for themselves. So I think this sort of idea, interference from the government, sort of stems from that. Now what he says, I'm going to zoom back so we can hear it from the start. I should also do that.
Taxes attack their earned merit. There is no such thing as a society.
So this is what I was thinking I was going to get into, and I think it's worth to sort of reflect. Actually, we should hear.
But just an ocean of individuals, each getting rewards for their merit. A dog-eat-dog kind of society.
Okay, so I thought he was going to explore more on it, but it's more, he's exploring the capitalist idea more than the alternative idea. That's kind of the problem I might have, because this is going to be a video which is sort of intentionally preaching to the choir. It's sort of intentionally poking fun at us from the perspective of not us. So let's give him some credit there. Let's not assume it's directed at me. It's clearly not directed at me. It's directed at people who disagree with me, to make fun of me. And I have a sense of humor. I can make fun of myself. But I do want to think about it. Clearly I don't have a sense of humor, because I clearly want to take this very seriously for the sake of my own curiosity. So my curiosity is more important than my sense of humor. The idea that there is a societal value is sort of the counter to what I was saying earlier. about sort of the tax being a punishment. The idea being that instead of thinking of it as taking away from you, instead of, it seems like it's the state is deciding the collective. You're not sort of, your entire actions, your entire life is sort of for the society. I mean, oh my god, it's so disgusting to me. I literally am revolted by this the rejection of individuality. I'm revolted by the appeal to such stringent societal demands. And I think I know it's going to sound really obscene to anyone who is thinking in these kinds of terms, and I want to be careful not to sort of just compare them to negative things. I think the reason I think I want to explain. So the reason it feels so revolting to me is there is such a, yeah, because of freedom is important, because I don't necessarily trust authority, because should be a limit to how much freedom I have, and that limit should start exactly at the freedoms of others. And I would argue that the same should be said of society. And society is then like used as a smoke screen to say, well, actually, certain of your freedoms aren't real, and that's like, it's used as a smoke screen, basically saying we are allowed to take action on your freedom because your freedom. Because we are society, we aren't an individual. We aren't we're not individuals in stretching our freedom so far that it enshrines over yours. We're actually just people. We're just the society, the thing you should be contributing to, the thing you're a part of. Where you and we're representatives of you. So when we're constraining your freedom, it's actually you constraining your own freedom, and that is, to me, just a blatantly abusable, I should say, because it's not necessarily abusable, but it's or not necessarily always abused, but it is blatantly abusable. It essentially gives people who are self-righteously confident in their own moral values the ability to say, well, we are allowed to make certain limitations on your freedom because we're not actually limiting your freedom. You are limiting your own freedom. You're just acting through us to limit your own freedom. And now I'm going to compare it to evil things, because I don't see how this attitude is correct for a communist system. Or like, I don't see if the attitude of society is wrong, why that's allowed. Why that the context of the reason I wanted to use a really negative example is because, well, isn't that just what Hitler said? And I know you shouldn't mention Hitler all of the time, but I like the extreme examples. I like to get really to the point of it. And the point of going to the most extreme example is, if I can't see it and we can't make an argument for it when it was clearly the most evil human beings in the history of the world, then there's a problem here. Like, if it can't survive Nazism, then it's a bad political structure. So and capitalism did survive Nazism. I mean, it even forced the Nazis to become more capitalist, funnily enough. So like, what I'm thinking about here is when the Nazis said, we're going to limit your freedoms, they did so with the argument that your freedoms are, with the argument that they're helping us, you're contributing to society. Like this is why I didn't want to connect them with negative things earlier. What I was thinking was authoritarian regimes, because all authoritarian regimes make this appeal to you should all work for society all the time. Society is more important. Society is the thing we're living for. But society is often case wrong, and often case the sort of collective view of people is tyrannical. So instead of sort of just saying, well, we should then allow the tyrants to act so long as they act within the zeitgeist of the people, I think is inherently regresses on the progress of democracy. We shouldn't allow the zeitgeist of the people to, like, it's the tyranny of the masses. That's why we have so many of our laws and constitutions. The idea that the state has the monopoly on violence instead of lynch mobs. These ideas stem from, even like the idea of lynch mobs. These were things that society, like, people in Americas in the antebellum period, as they call it, lovely little bit of Latin there. In the antebellum period, there were like, and even way into the 1950s, I think, 1970s even. I think the lynch mobbing was. We could look that up. Lynch mob, not the rock band. Lynching, 1925. I don't know how long it lasted, but that was a horrifying image. The idea of people. The idea then was that people genuinely thought these black people were bad for their societies, and so it was right for them to take from them their lives for society's good. And so it's obviously it's the most extreme case you can go to, but the idea that we live in a society where we should strive to uphold society, there, like he was saying here, there. Not down with volume, but
No such thing as a society.
Clearly there is such a thing as society. It's just that the society should have no moral value in this case, because society cannot be trusted any more than any individual can be trusted. That's why we give individual rights. We say your rights extend exactly to the point where other rights begin. And instead of sort of saying that the government's rights or the state's rights or the society's rights can supersede on this, is no better or worse than corporatism. It's no better or worse than the idea that aristocracies. It's no better or worse than the various authoritarian regimes we have had later. All of these points in history previous to this point, people argued that in favor of society. You shouldn't punish me, King Charles, whatever I recently watched what's it called? Trial English Civil War. I think it was a Charles, maybe it wasn't. Charles the First, yeah. So, like, his argument was he was fighting on behalf of society. He was killing people on behalf of protecting civil society. He was the state in his eyes. So, and he had broad popular support before the Civil War. Especially from the beginning, it went it started high and then it went down with time. But there was broad popular support. Like, oh yeah, I have to do it like this. I always think about this. It's hard to flex. But we have broad popular support for the idea, and that he was the state and he was representing society. So essentially, the idea that society, no, go back on. Society, there is nothing in society, yeah. At least not morally. Not morally significant.
But just an ocean of individuals, each getting rewards for their merit. A dog-eat-dog kind of society where the best man wins. and rarely a woman. All life is a race for wealth, for power, for status. Merit is the purest moral principle that determines the distribution of wealth, power, and status. Merit can be transferred across generations.
Oh.
You may wonder, why can the rich leave their wealth to their children? And in general, why does inheritance...
So the problem, that's a big ass problem. And really cool that he brings it up. Inheritance. Obviously, he brings it up flippantly to make a sort of off the cuff point. The interesting thing here, and best argument I've ever heard for it, was a single sentence by my dad. He said, "Why should the state decide how much money I can get to give you?" Because the idea here is essentially, for him, the sort of transaction is the same as if he buys chocolate or if he buys a movie. He spends money on his children, and this act of spending money gives him pleasure. The idea that he can sort of spend money on our pleasure, but it's sort of, sure, it seems like it's unfair because I don't deserve his merit. I didn't work. I'm clearly a slob, a worthless sack of shit. He did work. He's lived for many more years than me and done a lot of effort and gotten somewhere in life. So why should I benefit from his action? But on the flip side, why is it possible to address this problem without constraining his right to spend money how he wants to? And is it fair to us to say, well, he shouldn't have to? I mean, obviously, I can imagine a scenario where we find a loophole, where he starts a company that is hopelessly inefficient, and he just keeps investing in it, even though it keeps hemorrhaging money, and it's all basically a way to sort of siphon money. And that's, I'm sure, what a lot of rich people do to get away from sort of inheritance, and also to rationalize it to themselves that they're not just donating money to a clearly incompetent buffoon. They're actually spending money on trying to get them set up, and it's gonna be tough in the beginning, but they'll get there. I believe in them. It's essentially comes down to this weird problem which a parent's love for their children. Do the freedom of a parent to spoil their children versus the freedom of versus the inherent anti-meritocratic property of inheritance. Although I would argue that this is a weird system here. Like, if you assume that society is 100% based on merit, then it is clearly the case that, like, if you say that society is currently 100% based on merit, and according to this assumption, then merit can somehow be transferred across generations. So that's presumably what he meant by mortality. I guess that's why. Let's write a little bit 100% in here, because that's what he means. He doesn't just mean based on merit. He doesn't just mean is primarily meritocratic or is inherently or works towards meritocratic principles, or even is partially meritocratic. He means 100% meritocratic. And then you get some of these funny little contradictions like this. This is a weird ass contradiction. It is inherently, inheritance is anti-meritocratic.
exist. It's a consequence of a dynastic way of thinking from history, where individuals belonged to multi-generational dynasties that accumulated wealth. So if you die, you have the right to leave what you owned to your heirs. Wait, are we not born equal in rights? No, inheritance overrides that. Because, as we all know, wealth can always buy more power and therefore more rights from the moment of birth. Merit gives...
Okay, now you're starting to trigger me. I'm having interesting thoughts here, but that's just should I address it? You have the right to leave what you own to your heirs.
Wait, are we not born equal in rights? No, inheritance overrides that. Because, as we all know, wealth can always buy more power and therefore more rights from the moment of birth.
Like, what is he getting at?
Accumulated wealth. So if you die, you have the right to leave what you owned to your heirs. Wait, are we
Or, before you die. Like, the only replacement of death here is that rich people will give more of their money pre-death. I think it's really funny that you can't even see my eyes because of this stupid ass tape there. But I need it. I only have like 10 contact lenses. I'm not gonna. I need them for 3 weeks. Okay, most of the time I'm gonna wear glasses.
not born equal in rights? No, inheritance overrides.
So it's two arguments in one here. It's saying that are we not okay? It's saying that it's a rejection. Inheritance is a rejection of the idea that we're born of equal rights because when they have more money, then they can buy more rights with their power, because money is power is equals more rights. But it's like there are actually three. You can buy more rights with your power. That's absolutely not followed from any. I mean, this is the first point, right? If it is an interesting consequence of these assumptions, then you're way out of line already. This is not an interesting consequence of society being based on merit, because so far you have not established that you can always buy more rights with more power or more economic power. Like, you've made the equation from wealth to power. Sure, that's a fair enough comparison. Economic wealth is certainly a type of power, but the idea that this economic wealth then inherently leads to all kinds of power, so that you can give yourself any kinds of rights, is absurd. And then you go one step further in saying, well, actually, therefore it means that they actually have more rights from birth because they have the possibility of being able to buy more rights, which they don't actually have. You can absolutely have a capitalistic meritocratic society where you cannot buy more rights. Jesus Christ. In fact, most societies are based on this principle. It's a sure application and in practice not as good at it as we'd like, but good God, do you have no understanding of history? Have you not been paying fucking attention? The idea here is that we have gradually gotten to the point where we more and more meritocratic, where more and more remove this ability of people to buy rights. This concept that someone can buy rights is, in the Western world, atrocious. And there is no one, hand on their heart, who says that that is a good thing. And only people who says that that is possible are communists, who are so convinced that in fact capitalism is inherently broken that they cannot abide the idea that actually we've made it work. So yes, I did get a little bit angry there, but fuck him, fuck his stupid statement, and fuck his hidden premises.
That. Because, as we all know, wealth can always buy more power and therefore more rights from the moment of birth. Merit gives entitlement. The more merit you have, the more you are entitled to change the rules of the game for everybody else. You are entitled to do whatever you want in your company as CEO because you deserve that position. As a manager...
No, I just realized he's just going to keep going. He's just going to keep going. Okay, no, actually, I did. Fine, fair enough. We're not going to watch that. We're going to watch something more interesting then. Let's not watch something else triggering. That just annoyed me. That's just sad. There was some interesting points. Inheritance is an interesting point. As we all know, we can buy more rights. As we all know, the implicit idea that being that you can, there is so much power tied to economics, and so vaguely phrased is that power that it can be used. It's just conspiratorial thinking. The phrasing is, well, economic money is power, therefore people who are richer can do whatever they want. They can write whatever rights they want. Of course they can't, you absolute fucking retards. It's such a naively stupid leap to go from, well, money is power. Haha, look, I'm cynical and smart. Yes, yes, money is a type of power. Well done. Let me show you, actually. Let me show you. Here you have the box. It's called Power. And here you have another box. It's called Economic Power. See how that works? See? So, ability to... Actually, let's make it a bigger one. Right. Laws. Now, in this image, let me make it clear. In this image, as you see, there are certain undemocratic problems there. Certain problems with how the meritocratic society is expressed, and certain ways in which our economic power negatively impacts our societies. But the axiomatic leaps between power and the ability to undermine democracy is atrocious and does not deserve any due credit. Good God, I'm just annoyed. Let's just... New page. I don't want to think about that anymore. Propaganda. Also quite interesting for a variety of reasons. Let's do a deep breath. For the variety of reasons regarding sort of pseudoscience I've been speaking of yesterday, regarding the sort of economics I've been speaking about today, regarding the person we just saw who clearly made a video not directed at me, and it took me, well, I mean, it took me an hour, but it took him about 2 minutes to get to the point where he triggered me so much that, okay, I realized that actually it wasn't for me. But now we will deal with how propaganda works, and I would argue that all of this propaganda, all of this sophistry, can be cured quite simply by sort of a careful application of cynicism. I say careful because we just were witness to someone thinking that a little bit of cynicism can compensate for a lot of thinking, but that's it's a story for another day.
It's the ability of the news to influence the importance placed on certain topics by public opinion, just by covering them frequently and prominently.
Every propaganda technique. So news influencing the importance of things. Interesting. So this is agenda setting. So this would be... Okay, I shouldn't get so enthusiastic that I can't write anymore. Interesting. I just reflected on the fact that I write G's all the time like this, and if I put an I on top, it would be an I, and if I deepened the connection, I would have assumed it was a Y. But yeah, that's my G. Let's add a little bit of a circle there. Gender setting. So it's like using social trick. So the trick being that our brain cares more about the things people around us care about. So like if you are talking to your friends and you bring up, like I'm thinking about how would I applying this to your regular life, right? Because this is how you are how to be critical of this kind of video, which is explaining to you these concepts of propaganda techniques, is, well, what if they're not, what if you use them in either non-propaganda settings or in settings where you have limited amounts of power? How bad is it really to use these propaganda techniques when they're essentially, like, obviously if you think something is important, shouldn't you share that more often? If the news are all wrong about what is important, shouldn't they also communicate that even though they're wrong? Like, how do we know they're wrong? But without, like, but where's the metric that says how much things should be important? How important should things be? So imagine you, in your daily life, try and apply this. Imagine that you go to your job and you think that communism versus capitalism is the most important issue of the year. You think that the problems of capitalism are the most important things to talk about. You keep talking about it every day. You talk about capitalism, all the problems of capitalism. Isn't this just fair? Isn't this just reasonable? That if you genuinely believe that, why shouldn't you just talk about it? Now, sure, I can imagine you talking about it in order to gain some nefarious effect, but yeah. But let's go. We're not just. This isn't just like last time where we're going to reflect on what they actually are and what they mean and why they can be done well. Not antidote with a parenthesis or with a line. The antidote to this one is they think this is important. Do you think so? I mean, if you think about it yourself and think about, like, if the counter then is the cynicism, which, what was it called? The circumstantial ad hominem. The circumstantial ad hominem is the antidote to this this propaganda technique.
Appeal to fear. Appeals to fear seek to build support by instilling anxiety and panic in the general population.
Appeal to fear. Let's. Yeah. So, what is? Of course, expressing your own fear. Expressing your own fear is valid. Therefore, people will do this regardless of whether they're using it for propaganda or not. So you should be able to be resilient to this regardless of whether or not it's propaganda, because it's going to happen regardless of whether or not you're surrounded by bad actors. But, of course, assuming you're surrounded by bad actors is a very good way. Like, that's the cynicism part. It's the best way of being resilient to all propaganda techniques is assuming they're always being used, even by people who are clearly genuine in their beliefs. So expressing your fear is okay. So I'm normalizing this propaganda technique so that you will understand that it is always being employed, and if you understand it's always being employed, or I should state, I'm normalizing this so that you can see it in a lot of situations where you think positively of the person using this strategy. So even if your politician makes an appeal to fear, you would say, well, he's just justified in expressing. Aren't you afraid? Shouldn't we be afraid? That's what you'd say, right? And I would say, well, should we? I would say, I think the knowledge of the fact that this is going to be used by people who you agree with makes us better at being cynical about it. And the antidote. Why are you afraid?
Appeal to prejudice. Using prejudices to...
Maybe I should... sorry, I'm thinking. Should I explain this better? Should I explain better? So it's not just... So asking the question, if somebody expresses their fear the rejection of emotion. Like the antidote is rejecting their emotions. That's the sort of cynical thing, is like, or slash, of course they are just afraid. That's how you cure the appeal to fear. You think, oh Lord, look at this coward, he's just afraid of nothing. Maybe extrapolate, like victim blaming, essentially. You can extrapolate it to situations where it isn't, where you seem like I'm trying to stress this is something we would commonly think of as a negative, because you should be able to use it in situations where you normally wouldn't. That's the whole point. If you can't use it in situations you normally wouldn't, that's propaganda works normally. So for you, in order to be cured of sophistry of all kinds, you need to be able to apply criticism in situations you normally wouldn't. So which situation would normally wouldn't say this? Well, when women are walking home late at night. Of course, they're just scared women, right? That's not something you say. And so being able to stoop to this level, being able to stoop to the level of dismissing people's emotions as irrational fears, is a good thing, because it rejects this propaganda technique. Or it's a good thing when it is used to reject this propaganda technique. Well, I think being able to do it is an inherently good thing. This is an inherent value of cynicism. And the next one we can...
Anxiety and panic in the general population. Appeal to prejudice. Using prejudices to attach value or moral goodness to something. Appeal to prejudice. Using prejudices to attach value...
to attach value or
moral goodness
to something. Appeal to prejudice. Expressing, appealing. I mean, it's appealing to common ground. Honestly, I mean, if I were to say, "Oh, we funded this rebellion in Russia," right? It's because look, they're clearly evil tyrants, imperialists. So, in the context of that, we would say, well, it's okay, because clearly they are evil, right? So, in justifying, if we have this shared belief, this common ground, then that's fair. You don't need to go through the whole reasoning of the argument. You don't need to spend a lot of time proving that they are, in fact, racists and doing evil things. You just need to sort of, you just need to appeal to the things we already know. It's just a common useful shorthand for how we think about information and the world. But what's the antidote to an appeal to prejudice is, are they? It's rejecting everything you know. You think is true. That's how you cure that. You just simply say they're liars, they're stupid assholes, they'd say whatever they would.
To something. Inevitable victory. Invites those not already on the bandwagon
Inevitable victory.
to join those already on the road to certain victory. Those already, or at least partially, on the bandwagon are reassured that staying aboard is their best course of action. Join the crowd.
So it's like it's a twofold for the same sort of two strategies where you can like either you're already in it and you sort of encouraged to keep going, or you're outside and like we're gonna win, come on, join, be on the right side. Like let's make it more realistic. Wouldn't you rather vote for uh, say say the Democrats, like say wouldn't you rather vote for Biden than let Trump win? And so we're obviously going to win. Bernie Sanders isn't going to win, right? So we instead of we sort of collectively pool our goals by saying, well, we will definitely win, or it is better to be on our side and win than to fight on behalf of your most dearly held principles, or on like your most extreme principles, your most uniquely held principles, I should say, and lose. You would rather be able to enact some of your goals than none of your goals. So that's like appealing to. I mean, it's appealing to our desire to sort of have power. It's appealing to. I mean, it depends really on what kind of victory it is, but in the context of sort of political propaganda, it would be appealing to having political power. Let's do e.g. having political power. Winning political power, there we go. That's how you explain it. Winning political power. Antidote. Again, the antidote is really just doubt. I'm not going to write are they, it's doubt. We might write press X later. I mean, if that's a funny joke I want to write, then write it right now. Press X. Essentially, what you want to do to counter the appeals to an inevitable victory is insist that is to reject the inevitability of the victory, or reject, or that's a good one actually, because now we have two options, or reject. Okay, yeah, we should actually write both of them. Reject either inevitability or the value of victory. Bathroom break. I have to bring my glasses actually for that, so I'm gonna leave that on. So rejecting is either the inevitability or the value of victory.
On the bandwagon are
Give an example, in the U.S., like I said earlier, you have a value of victory in the sense that you would rather your side win. It's like it's an either or, it's a binary choice in the elections. Whereas in where I'm from in Norway, we have loads of different parties, and these parties are forced into coalition governments when they don't have enough popular support. And as far as I know, no party has ever had. Maybe it has in history. Honestly, I'm thinking actually maybe the Workers' Party under Kohalm Brundtland probably had as far as I know, had a lot of popular support. So they might have had over half the parliament support needed. But essentially, most of the time, what happens is you vote for the party you think best represents your views, and the other bigger parties are forced into making coalitions with smaller parties. So until they get to the point where they're representing half of the population, compromise. And so, in which case, I wouldn't jump ship just to vote for the winning party, because I'm voting for a party who may be a part of the winning coalition, and the value is that they have as much bargaining power as they have votes. So if I vote for the things I believe in and vote for the parties I believe in, that's better than just voting for the party I think is going to win. In Norwegian society, but not in US society. So there are situations in which either or can be more important. We should write the next one.
Are reassured that staying aboard is their best course of action. Join the crowd.
Join the crowd. I feel like this is an extension of the past one, but it's appealing. It's appealing to the same sort of social instinct, at least.
This technique
I wanted to go further up, but apparently not. It doesn't like me scrolling as much.
is used to convince the audience that a program is an expression of an irresistible mass movement and that it is in their best interest to join. Beautiful is an expression of an irresistible mass movement.
An irresistible mass movement. Okay. Appealing to loneliness, I guess. Antidote. Cynicism. What's the word? Misanthropy. That's the solution. Hate everyone, then misanthropy and contrarianism. Cynicism is great. All of these sort of malign concepts are good for you.
And that it is in their best interest to join. Beautiful people.
Beautiful people. I mean, if somebody appeals to it as in your best interest to join, then it might be then that's genuinely good appeal. It's just the idea that there is an irresistible mass movement being in itself valuable. That's when it sort of becomes weird, because that actually works by itself. Like when the reason it doesn't have to be in your best interest to join. If they made the appeal that it was in your best interest to join, then that's a perfectly valid political appeal. Perfectly reasonable thing for reasonable people to do. Oh, a little bit cold on my legs, so I wanted to cover them. Beautiful people.
This technique is usually used in advertising instead of politics. It's the type of propaganda that deals with famous people or depicts attractive, happy people. This suggests that if people buy a product or follow a certain...
So you're following the logic of the presentation way too much. Too positively inclined to all of this. It's essentially just association. Beauty with something. But I mean, if people are swayed by the fact that more beautiful things, more beautiful people follow something, then more power to them. Let them be retards on their own time. Associating beauty with something. Antidote. The antidote to this is, again, contrarianism. It's rejecting beauty. It's either rejecting beauty standards or indeed creating your, mocking it. Mocking it. Rejecting vanity. Yeah, because like if you think of it as vanity, then you're immune to it. Cynicism is the antidote to sophistry. All of these people are so vain.
Ideology, they too will be happy or successful. Big lie. The main belief behind this technique is that people will more easily fall victim to a big lie than to a small one. It could happen because others are at a loss for where to even begin to refute it.
Okay. Big lie. It's the type of propaganda where you say something. So it's harder to justify this in terms of might be positive. So maybe, but let's still make our best effort. You state, so positive interpretation. Stating the whole idea rather than listing its parts. Listing. Fascinating. What's the antidote? Incredulity.
Classical conditioning. Everyone responds.
Classical conditioning.
To classical conditioning, which is a behavioral procedure in which a natural stimulus is associated with a neutral stimulus enough times to create the same response by using just the neutral one.
Yeah. So, as a propaganda technique, like obviously it works for everyone. See Skinner. Honestly, I can't explain how intricate this is for our process of learning without just referencing Skinner. To be fair, Skinner thought that this was all learning, so he's obviously going to be overzealously defending it, but it's worth hearing the overzealous defense, just to sort of, yeah, I mean, you hear his sort of, it's when you're listening to experts, it's fun to go from extremes. It's more useful to go from extremes if you're listening to people who are competent in the field than just the extreme positions on a political spectrum. Oh, good God. He's Skinner. What's the antidote? The antidote to classical conditioning is you can condition yourself, right? It's weirdly, it's exposing yourself to the neutral stimulus. I mean, this is just the scientific answer. It annoys me because I wanted there to be only cynical answers, but that's just the scientific answer. If you're in classical conditioning, the way classical conditioning works is that you associate something every time. Every time you smell steak, you ring the bell. You start salivating at the. I start salivating at the thought of myself. No, you start salivating at the sound of the bell because you associate it so much. But if you constantly ring a bell, then that doesn't work, right? If you're constantly listening to the same bell sound, even when you're not getting the stimulus, then it doesn't work. And if you, after you've become classically conditioned, you then induce it with a drooling, and you never get the reward, you never get the association, then eventually you lose the association. It's just a boring answer. You can cure yourself by just sort of exposing yourself to the processes that are being used against you.
Cognitive dissonance. It exploits people's desire to be consistent. For example, if an analyst finds that a certain group of people hate his candidate for senator but love actor A, he could use actor A's endorsement of their candidate to change people's minds.
Okay. I mean, I think that's false what he said at the beginning.
By using just the neutral one. Cognitive dissonance. It exploits people's desire to be consistent.
The desire to be consistent. I'm not sure that's what it's about. I'm going to move it a little bit over too, because I notice I'm sliding it to the side here. Cognitive dissonance. What? Why did I stop remembering how to write?
For example, if an analyst finds that a certain group of people hate his candidate.
So cognitive dissonance is just, I mean, I don't see how it's okay, he's arguing it's a propaganda technique when you're using a celebrity endorsement, but that's just an appeal to beauty. I'm just going to write some question marks here because it's not actually a propaganda technique. There's a different thing that's a propaganda technique. This is just a description of a psychological state. Being wrong about some things, but right about related things. I guess the idea is you're exploiting exploiting the desire to be consistent by saying, well, if I like this actor, then I should also like the things that this actor likes, which doesn't follow whatsoever. That's just... I'm going to give an antidote to the example. Even though I think it's a wrong example, or it's a cognitive dissonance isn't a propaganda technique. I think it's different. The propaganda technique he's describing here is different. He's describing the phenomena which happens in someone's mind when a different kind of propaganda technique has been used, and you can get here from any set of propaganda techniques. I'm noticing that I am not going to be streaming as much when my glasses are broken. Should probably consider getting some contact lenses. Antidote to example. The antidote to the example is that the people you like are stupid assholes. People are stupid assholes. I mean, it's... If people are stupid assholes, then the fact that somebody you like is also a stupid asshole doesn't really affect you. Of course they endorse them, they're a stupid asshole. Of course they didn't endorse them, they're a stupid asshole. It doesn't really matter. So that's the antidote to that example. You just accept that all people are stupid assholes. Not that bad.
For senator, but love actor A, he could use actor A's endorsement of their candidate to change people's minds. Plain folk. It attempts to convince the audience that the propagandist's positions reflect the common sense of the people. It is designed to win the confidence of the audience by communicating in the common manner and style of
Plain folk. Humility. That's why you would do it. If you're a person, you're trying to sort of be empathetic to normal people, right? I'm just like you guys. I'm also a stupid asshole, right? You're trying to... I mean, I say that. I want to be clear. When I say people are stupid assholes, all people, myself included, all people are stupid assholes. It's inherently... I mean, people. I've heard people argue that cynics just want everyone to think everyone is evil so that they can justify their own evil. No, I want everyone to think that everyone is evil so that we don't get abused by all of these strategies. Okay, let's listen to
the
that
target audience. A common example of this type of propaganda is a political figure, usually running for a placement in a backyard or shop doing daily routine things. Cult.
Antidote. Appeals to authority. Weirdly, how many of these can be answered by many fallacies. We think of, I don't know, if everyone's a stupid asshole, being just like everyone isn't. Oh, that's a lovely pattern there. Jesus Christ. I didn't notice that until now. 386683. A symmetrical number. That's pretty. I'm gonna make a little bit of a note. That's the ugliest heart I've ever drawn. And that's saying a lot, honestly. I don't like hearts. You have to. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm not going to write the number. 386683 is a lovely number.
Of personality. A cult of personality arises when an individual uses mass media to create an idealized and
so the opposite. So why do both of these work? Personality. And I think that's kind of a problem here, is we're sort of glazing over. The politician wants to show that I understand your issues. Actually maybe. So that's maybe a more better cynical point is that these people don't know you and your problems. Whereas a cult of personality, I might have to do this in several episodes.
Heroic public image, often through unquestioning flattery and praise. The hero personality then advocates the positions that the propagandist desires to promote.
Typically, the cult of personality is around the propagandists themselves. Yeah, now, okay, now because this is also like referencing. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. I think either I'm too tired to make sense of it or it's stupid. So we're gonna take a break, stop. I want to cordially invite all of you. I think that based actually on what just happened today, and me thinking in general, I think I want to make these streams a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more focused. And so, of course, I like being able to sort of dive into a couple of topics, but the sort of spontaneous capitalism discussion probably should have been alongside a video, which was more like this, more interesting, more sort of to the point, or indeed something to read. So I think, and also the thing that I have gotten, I mean, obviously it's 13 views, so I shouldn't probably be that happy about it. But I've gotten reading the Unabomber Manifesto is the thing that has gotten the most views. So I think I'm going to do that again. I think I'm going to go read some stuff. I also wanted to start a series where I start reading the Quran, and I'm going to call it an Islamophobe reads the Quran because I'm edgy like that. And honestly, just having a video like this, where the title is "Cynicism is the Antidote to Sophistry," I think will sufficiently justify, for me at least, the use of the term Islamophobe, even though it is typically used to mean racist. It has also been overused sufficiently that I think maybe I can get away with it. But also, I am extremely anti-theistic, so I will be extremely critical, more so even than I usually am, more so than I am when I'm watching these videos. And if this is a video I enjoy, I think is good, and as compared to the other one where I started yelling, and there might be more yelling when I'm reading Quran, but when it's also reading, so I don't get to watch someone be smugly wrong. I have to sort of interpret their smugness, and I'm usually a little bit more generous when I'm reading things. Because I don't have all of the visual cues and I can deal with their thoughts in a more structured way. So I want to do that, and I might do that later today. I'm kind of hoping I will. I'm hoping I do it at some point in time when it's bright outside. It's starting to get light now. Could theoretically do it now, but I want to start cooking some stuff. I want to maybe take a walk and do some other stuff. And yeah, I think that's a good idea, something I want to do. Because reading stuff is something I can confidently do well, and it also doesn't need, I don't need to spend this much time sort of reflecting and analyzing, which is what I would normally do. These are the kinds of videos I want to, this is like, there are videos I just sit quietly and watch the whole way through, and those videos are also interesting, but those videos I'm not obviously going to stream because I'm just watch the video yourself. But this is sort of trying to engage with ideas. Typically when I am sitting quietly and thinking about or watching things, it's just so that I can think about things on my own time instead. Whereas now I'm sort of trying to swap that a little bit so that I can show something to the world. Because I feel like I understand that obviously anyone can do this, and this is a lot of what most people do, but I don't see a lot of people doing this kind of content, and I think there is some sort of value in showing how I would be reflective, how I would be critical, how I would engage with ideas extremely sort of aggressively, even though it doesn't necessarily mean that I reject all of the ideas. I'm intentionally rejecting many ideas. I'm intentionally trying to undermine ideas, because if I fail to undermine them, then I feel more confident in those beliefs. Or if indeed by undermining them I find answers to more interesting questions. So yeah, I'm assuming either it's going to be, I'm assuming I'm actually, based on now telling myself this, I'm assuming I'm going to do the reading later, and I just have to decide if it's going to be reading the Quran or reading the Unabomber Manifesto. There's certain reasons for both. I won't go into them too much right now, but if anyone sees this and wants to come tell me, I will sort of make a tentative assessment that I'm going to do this in about 12 hours is too long, 10 hours is too little, or 10 hours is too long, 8 hours, 8, maybe. I'm thinking more like in 5 or 6 hours. I'll start doing that. And yeah, we'll probably take notes alongside it, but I'll try and not take as much time to talk about it unless I have something I think is interesting to say. Or maybe I won't. Maybe it'll be just like this. I'll probably be a little bit faster in the reading. That's one of the problems, I think, when I was reading the Unabomber Manifesto. One of the things I didn't like about it was I spent too much time on all of it, and I could get further and actually sort of make some progress and actually express myself in a better way. So yeah, and if I do that, I'm going to start at the beginning again, and I will probably also give it a number. So I hope to see someone later. And for that, we have done today.